What's going on, everybody? We're back with another edition of Thee CrazyFaceUno Podcast. I am here with a family member as of last year and a very special woman in my life and in my wife's life. Her name is Kaitlin Ouverson, and I am excited to have her here. Kaitlin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
How are you today?
Good. I like the intro music.
It's fun, right?
It
I
is.
want it to be a little upbeat and kick things off.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what's funny?
No.
Do you hear that sound?
What? The buzzing?
I forgot to once again. See, I told you.
We were
I do
talking
need
about
a
making a
checklist.
checklist, yeah.
Yeah, I got to get a checklist. But before we get off topic here, I want to give you the attention and the a rundown of your life that you deserve.
Okay.
A little bit. I think so. This week, next week technically, but we are going to be having all women on the podcast.
Okay.
Just kind of highlighting some of the badass women in my life, and you're one of them. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You recently won a very special award.
I did.
The Finace and Commerce Rising Young Professionals Award of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll talk about that. You were a member of ROTC growing up.
I was.
You are currently an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
You graduated from the University of Minnesota.
I did.
You are a crafter
At heart.
at heart. You're a cook, chef. You like to cook.
I do.
And you're just awesome. You're my wife, Dana's sister.
Mm-hmm.
So, as of last year,
Younger sister.
younger
We'll just
sister.
Lay that
We'll
out
get into
there.
that.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. I definitely want to talk about this. I gotta have all the ammo I can, and it's gonna be live recorded. Like, come on, it doesn't
It'll
get
be a
any
good
better.
conversation.
Yeah, it'll be great. So, one thing that I'm starting to integrate into this podcast every time I'm on here is I want to ask, because I think it's important to have your perspective as well, what are 3 things you think we should know about you?
Well, one of the things, so we'll talk about the rising young professionals, and they also asked me what's something special about myself that nobody knows about. And so I guess now it's out there, but I love Sloppy Joes.
Sloppy Joes.
My husband, Andy, makes the best Sloppy Joes, and probably everyone else in the world would hate them, but I never had them growing up, and for some reason, magically, he makes them, and he has to make it, like, once a week for me.
It's funny how you love Sloppy Joes. Mm-hmm. We joke about this because we say that our significant others, our husbands and wives, are just like each other. And Dana was like, oh, I never had like spaghetti growing up. Yeah. And she loves spaghetti, and I fix her spaghetti all the time.
It's just the weirdest thing.
And you get Sloppy Joes.
I do love spaghetti too. Or it's like spaghetti noodles with Alfredo sauce.
Yeah.
Like just the jar stuff. But,
yeah.
You know, when you have Chinese food for the first 18 years of your life, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I don't want another Chinese food.
Which is something I didn't touch on, but since you brought it up, I think it's important to maybe note your mom is Chinese.
Yep.
And your dad is a white German
yes.
mutt from the United States, like the rest of us, pretty much. So, which is interesting. We will get into some of that. There's some cultural things that the Thell family, you and your sister, like, kind of grew up. I think it's common. I just think it's just not necessarily talked about, but we'll get into that too. So we got Sloppy Joes is one thing.
Sloppy Joes. I absolutely love my job. Found a career that I enjoy. I love working hard at, and definitely kind of found my place in life on that side, on the career-wise thing. And I have the best husband in the world. It is, yeah, and we talk, and we'll touch on this, that I totally married a guy that is exactly like my sister, which is really weird. So I married my sister in male form, I know. And then Dana says that she married a man in or his sister in male form, and I was like, yeah, it's probably about right.
Yeah, the more and more we get to know each other, it's like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, no.
Strong personalities,
I'm not surprised by we like the same thing.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like, oh, man, I want to learn to sew. How do you do that? Teach me. I think it's just our curiosity sometimes and, like, the way we, like, see the world. We just see things differently than, like, our significant others.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Our spouses. Well, awesome. Let's dive straight into, let's not even bury the lead.
Okay.
Let's get right into it.
Okay.
I want to hear about your Young Professionals 2019 award that you just won. I think it's really cool. And I know Dana's, like, given me a few little snidbits, but, like, I honestly don't know a lot about this award and kind of what that means to you, the process, just the whole, I mean, start to finish. I would love to hear just the story of how this transpired and kind of like what it means to you in your field and for your future.
Yeah, it's a very humbling experience having this honor. You know, there's hundreds of applicants for it, and it started off as looking through, I got an email from, I'm a part of an organization called Minnesota Commercial Real Estate Women. So it's all about empowering women in the commercial real estate industry. Yeah. And so I got an email from one of the board members that just said, hey, I think you would be a really great fit. You should consider a nomination for this. Look more into it. Finance and Commerce is putting it on. And within the commercial real estate industry, and so I talked with my boss about it, and we decided to submit a nomination. And so out of hundreds of applicants, they picked out 30. So there were 30 honorees in 2019, and so they had a article in Finance and Commerce, a special article about it. They had an award ceremony. So I got a cute little trophy, and it's got a little star on it, and it sits up at my desk.
And it's got to feel good to be, like, requested to do that. Like, it's not like, I know it's an application process that you have to submit, right? Or, but it's nice to know, or to have that recognition from the people that are in leadership a little bit above you, to be like, hell yeah, go for it.
You
like,
do it.
Do this. You deserve this. Like, that's got to feel really good.
It does. I think it's just this experience where, and when someone says boil down what you want to do with your life or your career into one sentence. You know, my sentence is, I want to be a technical expert in my field. I want to be known for the work that I do, and I want to be able to be that go-to person. So if someone's got an issue with their project, I'm going to call Kaitlin because she's going to know what to do. Or she knows who to talk to solve this problem for me. And
what is your job title specifically? I don't know if I mentioned
So I'm a project engineer. I work in environmental consulting for it. So I do mostly brownfields redevelopment. So it's contaminated sites with a construction component to it. So I have a civil engineering degree from the University of Minnesota with a minor in environmental and ecological engineering. So it's very environmentally focused, and it also has that construction management piece to it.
Absolutely. Cool. So you get this nomination, or you get the nudge from your board director and the okay from your boss. You submit your application. Is it like a long period of time you have to wait, or like what's that?
I don't remember. I think the nomination was in November, and then you kind of found out after the holiday season. So it was kind of like February. So it was a few months. And
it's one of those where you submit it and kind of forgot about it long enough.
Yeah, and then you get an email.
Like, I did that.
I was like, oh, okay. It was I remember it was a Sunday morning, and I saw it. I was like, why? This must be junk mail or something. And you start reading. I was like, oh yeah, I did. I applied for that, and it was really excited.
Yeah.
And I emailed, my entire team, and I emailed my boss who helped me put the nomination together, and it was just a really exciting time to have it. And
so the nomination, and then you go to the award ceremony. Like, what was that process from that point to, like, I know you 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I think it was a couple of weeks ago.
You went to Chicago to receive your awards, and...
No, I went to Chicago for vacation.
The
award ceremony
but it was that weekend,
here. It was, yeah.
Okay.
So it was...
I'm mixing two.
You're combining them both together.
Chicago was celebration, and you had the award.
The award ceremony was 2 days before that. And so you received the award. You got contacted by one of their journalists to do just a profile on yourself, and they had a photo shoot. So I got new headshots and everything in the Lumber Exchange building.
Nice.
So it was a really cool
Congratulations. That's so cool.
Yeah, and then they had the award ceremony a couple of weeks ago, and then went to Chicago just for fun. Found some round trip flights for $100, and it just happened to be that weekend that we picked. So
Heck yeah.
It was a good kind of celebration.
Yeah, that's awesome. That worked out perfect.
It did.
So, in your field, it is generally a very male-dominated industry or field, engineering in general. Which this is a loaded question in a lot of ways because we can go a lot of different directions with this, from college to, I know Dana gave me a few little tidbits here to ask you about, like, just your college experience and kind of your major. What does this award in some ways mean to you as a woman and in such a male-dominated, like, industry, and knowing that you're getting kind of this notoriety and just a pat on the back for the success that you've had and your hard work that you've put in so far?
I think it's anybody who wants to kind of progress, and especially in consulting, you want to be known for the work that you do, and you want to get your name out there. So I think having this award so early on in my career is definitely, it's been really helpful to kind of skyrocket it and have people that are like, oh, hey, I saw you in that Finance and Commerce article. And congratulations. And it's been a really humbling experience, and I'm trying really hard, and it's some of the differences between men and women, and I've been reading a lot of books on kind of the confidence that comes in within, and I've been trying to kind of channel that confidence and just say thank you. You know, it's not a, oh, it was nothing. It was, it really wasn't that big of a deal. The nomination was bad. Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's thank you. I've tried really hard, and I'm really happy that someone has acknowledged that and appreciates it and has shown it through.
As you should. Absolutely.
And so it's like just having that confidence and just having that attention and accepting it has been, it's an interesting thing. And it just, with the male-dominated industry, and I think it all just kind of depends on where you're at in your career, and you can look at it in two different ways. You can look at it in, I am an engineer, I'm a professional, and I work my buns off to get this, and I'm shown, my hard work shows through, or it's because I'm a woman, I have to work twice as hard to prove that I deserve these projects and to deserve that. And so you can kind of look at it both ways, and you can probably take it either, probably it's a combination of both, that I feel like being in a male-dominated industry, you have to work twice as hard to prove, if I had a male counterpart and someone, we're pitching the same job twice, they might go with a male because they feel they look more like an engineer, they look more like they would succeed on the project. But there's a
subconscious, like, bias, and we talk about it. I mean, the topic is brought up a lot in like race relations a lot, and I think maybe it's overlooked a little bit in this area of, like, just women and the workplace as well. Man, I think, I talked with Kaitlin Ouverson yesterday, and we just kind of, mentioned some of these, just growing up as a woman and, like, some of these different things of, I think that there's some, like, weird, like, evolutionary, like, biases too, that, like, are kind of innate within us, where we look at certain things, or I know myself, like, I really do, like, I want to provide and care for and take care of and like be that stereotypical male sometimes. I have my other things that are quirky in and of themselves, but, like, I really do, like, have that desire, and I think that sometimes those things come out and I don't even realize how they come across necessarily, and I think it's a conversation that's starting to begin. It's happening, like we're talking about now, of just recognizing some of those things as males, and as you recognize it because you deal with it probably a little bit more. But it's funny, just those personality things. I know Dana and I have even talked about some of these different nuancy things of how direct from a female can come across completely different than if a male is direct with someone. But also, it's this fine line, I'm sure that you have to deal with this as well, with the different people that you deal with on a daily basis in your industry, that you also can't just, like, be, like, a pushover. You also have to be very strong, and you have to find that balance. And fair or not, that's almost like where you're at, you know, like you have to find that balance until those things kind of work themselves out and I think that women are like rising up. I think that there's so much positivity that's coming in the women's movement in some ways. We're not there yet.
I think there needs to be a combo between, so you need to be assertive and you need to show this confidence, but you need to show your own personal confidence. It's because there's a lot of studies, or there's been a lot of research that shows, you know, a lot of women can be passive. They wait until they meet every single checkbox before applying for a job position they feel like they deserve, versus guys will be like, well, you know, I maybe meet like one or two of those. I'm just going to go for it. You know, if I fail, I fail. Right. Kind of thing. So women need to take that approach in the sense of just go for it. You know, you don't need to be 100% sure of yourself. And one of the things I keep telling myself is, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? Sure. You know, and running through that. The worst thing that's going to happen is most of the time they're just going to say no. No, you're not quite, we don't feel like you're quite qualified. We don't feel like you're quite ready for this position and these opportunities. You know, let's talk about ways that you can build that self up. So you just need to have that confidence to be maybe a little more assertive in that, but you can't also say, I'm going to be assertive like a man, because I think that also comes off. Right. You know, really off as well, is because when you
authenticity,
being genuine, you're just kind of forcing yourself into that role, and you feel like you need to be that assertive, and it comes off almost. People are just very off by that personality as well. So it's also just kind of what I tell a lot of people is to just find your internal confidence, and just let it shine through, and then it definitely comes. You know, it comes off as that way. So then you feel very authentic. You feel very natural. And so you just have to dig down deep inside and just think about, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Yeah. They're going to say no. Or you're going to have a really awkward conversation with someone. You know, if it's like, I really don't like networking. But I'm going to force myself to go introduce myself to that random person against the wall. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a really awkward conversation, and you're like, okay, this person's really weird. I'm just going to thank you. You shake your hand, and then you move on. Yeah. And you're never going to think about it again. Right. It's one of those. And so it's just trying to think about thinking that through. And
I find myself in that same situation. And I think everybody does, you know. But you can show up at a place. I would call myself an extrovert. I have introverted tendencies, and the older I get, the more I recognize those things and realize those I need some time to myself now. But I definitely, you walk into a room of people you don't know, and you're like, it's so easy to just sit and be the wallflower, you know, and observe until you feel comfortable. But you could do that all day long until
the day's over.
Yeah, until the day is over, and then you realize shoot, I just missed an opportunity to go and mingle and meet people and hear their stories or whatever it is. There's definitely a inner self-confidence. I wrote that down. I love that. Find your inner confidence and let that shine through. I think that's really important. I hope that everybody out there can take that to heart for sure.
And I would say I'm probably an extrovert too, but I've done those Myers-Briggs exams, those tests that you do online. And the last one that I did, because I just wanted to check in and say, where am I at? And I was literally 51-49%. So it was 51% extrovert, 49% introvert. So I am both, it's like a split personality almost, where I understand both, where I love just sitting in a quiet room and just meditating to myself. But I also enjoy being out in crowds, and I enjoy talking to people. And
I'm the same way.
Kind of that energy,
Of course, I'm the same way. Well, let's go back. When did you first realize, or what was the decision to major in engineering? When did that come about, or how did that process start for you?
So, growing up, I've always loved math. Math and science were kind of my strong suits. And I remember going to Menards with my dad. Sure. And he'd be like, okay, I'm buying these nuts and bolts for $1.53. And the lady's pushing all the buttons and calculating it. And my dad goes, I'm giving her a 20. What's my change back? And then you're just doing this quick math.
Yeah. I gotta beat her. I can't let her get
1847. And I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to make sure that math's right before I say it on the podcast. And the lady's like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. And so I've always just been good at math, and it's come a little more naturally than maybe English or history and the other types of subjects. So I went to I went to Rosemont High School, and then I transferred over to the School of Environmental Studies, which really kind of brought out the environmental side of it, the sustainability.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so I kind of followed in our older brother's footsteps,
Yeah.
and went there for my last 2 years of high school and graduated from there. And when I graduated, you know, when you're thinking about what do I want to be when I grow up, and I went to so going into the University of Minnesota, I was like, okay, I'm going to double major in environmental science and mathematics.
Yeah.
And then you get to college and you're like, holy crap, what
What
do
did
I
do?
do with this?
Yeah.
What do you do with that? I don't want to teach. I really don't want to do this. I'm like, oh crap, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
And so I thought like aerospace engineering might be fun, and then got that and just thought that was, I was like, nah, no, that's not for me either. So I found civil engineering. And it was kind of this, it's a very problem solving. So here's your problem, design a solution. And they have an environmental engineering program within the civil engineering. And so it worked out really well, and I kind of just found this right career. And I found it really early on, which I think helped me in my successes, is because I was interviewing professors and just saying, what do you do? Tell me about your research. I'm just really curious. And when I was interviewing one of the professors, she goes, well, I don't really have any opportunities in my lab, but I know Bill Arnold over at the University of Minnesota, you know, one of her counterparts, I think he's looking for an undergrad assistant to help out. I went, okay, well, I didn't come in here to look for a job, but like, great, you know, this is an opportunity. So I was working with master's students and helping them develop their thesis and their research and going through
Was that your
process.
internship?
No, so
That's separate.
Yeah.
That was a separate thing. Very cool. So you like got your feet wet right away with
so
that.
My freshman year of college, I was working in a research lab in environmental engineering, which really helped out. Yeah, and I have a feeling we're going to transition into ROTC, and we're going to touch on it. But so I joined ROTC my sophomore year in college and did it. And what happened was someone from another consulting firm came over and just said, hey, we're looking for someone with a little bit of military background, someone that's an engineering student that can help out with structural assessments, because we're doing structural assessments on military bases.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, please.
you know, as a sophomore going into my junior year, I was
Yeah.
like, well, you know, like, okay, well, I guess, you know,
Yeah.
I feel like I might be qualified for that. I don't really know anything right now, but I might as well just apply for the job and introduce myself. And it actually ended up being, since I was a civil engineering student, I could do the structural assessments, help out with those teams, and also split my time with their environmental department.
Interesting.
And so it was so I beat out, I don't know how many students for that job, but so a sophomore going into a junior year.
Yeah.
With an internship, which doesn't happen very often right now, because it's all about the experience. And I've had a lot of students, when I help out with recruiting events, they say, I don't have any experience, so I can't get an internship, but I can't get a job without an internship. And so how do you do that? And what I had was, I did an undergraduate research program. I was a research assistant, and it was one of those things that it worked out well for me, that I just kind of had that experience, and it showed through that I had lab experience already. I had some background in environmental engineering already, and so I had a 2-year internship before I graduated college.
It's funny because it's true even today, and you see it a lot. I see the path that you went on, and that really makes sense in my head. I think sometimes people definitely have trouble finding that path, and there is that loop that you get caught in where I'm like, well, I don't have the major. I noticed myself in this, like, I don't have the major, I also don't have the experience, but man, I want that. Looks awesome. Like, I'd be good at that. You know, like, how do I get there? And it's finding that path. And it's cool that you had that ability. Now, ROTC, what was your decision to join that group?
I think I've always been interested in the military side of it. So in high school, I did a program at the Naval Academy it was a week-long kind of training course on what it would be like to be at the Naval Academy. And so, and my brother joined the Marine Corps right out of high school.
Was that influential for you?
I think so. I mean, I think it was at a very influential time so him going through basic training and all that, and I knew I really wanted to go to college, and so I knew I didn't want to enlist right out of high school, but so I was looking at different opportunities. So the Naval Academy was one of them, and kind of loved just absolutely loved that experience and thought it would be great.
Yeah.
And I was disqualified because I had allergies. So I was medically disqualified to apply for the Naval Academy because of that. But I had an opportunity to kind of redeem myself or back in ROTC. So then I decided, I did my freshman year and kind of decided, well, do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? So I just said, I'm going to go for it. I'm just going to try it out. So I joined my sophomore year, walked on, in hopes to also get a scholarship, because with ROTC, your college is paid for, and then you do your service afterwards.
Absolutely.
And that, that's where you get the trade-off. And so looking for financial assistance, that was one of the opportunities is, okay, I could do it my sophomore year, and I can get funding for my last 2 years of college, still go into the military. So at the end of that year, we had, when I was up for a scholarship, I had this review process and going through, and Kaitlin, you're excelling in ROTC and all those classes and whatnot, but and this was this is maybe my memory, and maybe it went down completely different than I remember it, but it was, your GPA's not there. Your engineering GPA doesn't compare to these high school students coming in there. And I said, you're comparing some kids' 4.0 GPA from high school to my 3.3.
Yeah, that doesn't.
That
You just touched on it, even coming in of being overwhelmed with the workload of everything you had going on, and now they're comparing you to a high schooler's workload compared to a college.
Right. So we're not, but we can give you like a $3,000 stipend or something like that. I was like, I can make $3,000 working a job. Right. That's not gonna give me anything. That's not gonna get me anywhere. And so I decided to leave that opportunity. Okay. But at that point, it was what I kind of had this thought, where I'm going through this transition where I was in ROTC, they weren't giving me a scholarship. Do I want to go into the military? Then I was offered an opportunity to. I was offered the internship that kind of started the whole kind of environmental engineering process on it. And then I also met this man, and and I was like, we had this conversation that was, okay, if you go into the military, this isn't probably going to work because I don't want to travel. I want to stay in Minnesota. And so it was kind of this internal, what do I want more? And you got to pick and choose. Right. And so I decided to pick my career, and this guy that I eventually ended up marrying. It was just, and it was one of those, it was one of those things that we didn't really know each other very well at the time, and we just kind of started meeting, but I just kind of felt that he was different. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, take a chance, and, I can still support the military in other ways, and I can still do that opportunity. And so I decided to leave, especially, and I think it really hurt me my sophomore year in college, being like, you don't think I'm deserving of a scholarship. Why? I cannot, because with ROTC, it's early morning exercises, it's classes, it's evening work, it's drill work. And so I worked 3 jobs in college at the time. So it's like, you're asking me to work 3 jobs, do your courses on top of that, and try to graduate with an engineering degree. Something's got to give at that point. And I remember calling my dad up at one point because I didn't drain my savings account, but it was kind of going in that direction where I was like, I don't have as much savings as I want, I want to be. And I remember calling him and being like, Dad, I have mice in my apartment, and I don't know if I can afford my next rent. And I obviously probably could have, but I was like, my dad goes, what do you want? How can I help you? And I was like, I don't know. I just need to dig myself out of this hole. And so my dad, I think my dad paid for that month's rent to just be like, let's be done with this. That's one thing that you do not have to worry about. You can kind of figure out the rest of your life, and, let's get you over this something, and of course it was after that, having the weight of the financial burden on there. And I was like, everything kind of started.
Thank goodness for parents.
I know. And loving parents that want to support you and everything that you do.
My parents have supported me so much through all the crazy adventures that I've done, and I recognize that as well. They're such an integral part of my life. And
absolutely.
As I get older, as I've gotten married, and it's different for you, I think, a little bit. You live a little closer to your parents, but I don't, and I feel bad about that sometimes, but it doesn't change the fact of how important they were in my life. And I know how important your family is to you and to just the place that you're in. not that this is a therapy session, but I recognize a theme that I also have, I think, is this drive to, like, almost, like, prove your worth. Mm-hmm. And to prove people wrong and to show them that you have value. Mm-hmm. And I recognize that in myself because I think oftentimes I look at what I've done with my life and whatever, and I'm like, well, still waiting, you know? But I just always, I don't know, I find that drive in myself. I'm just like, I want to prove you wrong. Like, tell me I can't do it. I dare you, you know? Like, there's, even with this project that I'm doing here, you know? I got a good, like, sense of people's, like, thing, right? Like, I take this very seriously, right? I've jumped into this whole thing. And part of it's like, okay, I'll prove you wrong, you know? You don't have to say anything. People don't have to say anything sometimes. It's just that, like, feeling you get. You're like, okay, you're not quite bought in yet. Like, okay,
you're not on the boat yet. Yeah. It's okay.
Has that, I can tell that that's definitely even stories from your family, like growing up as a young girl and against your siblings, against your parents and your rebel ways or whatever. It's definitely a theme within your life. Do you recognize where that comes from? Or, like, do you recognize that that's even something that within yourself at all? Or is that something even?
Drive? Or
just that drive, or that, like, I'm going to prove you wrong, that, like, desire to prove people wrong, or, like, the desire to, like, get after it and be like, I'm going to do this. Because I feel like, I don't know, just for myself, and I see it in the themes of kind of people, like you mentioned with your ROTC, like, scholarship, like, oh, you're not going to give me what I'm worth? Like, all right, like, I'll show you, you know, and I'll go my own path and I'll blaze my own trail.
And that's where some of the confidence comes in. You know, you look at it after the fact where you're just like, you might have just been a scared little girl just trying to make decisions. But then it's also, you know, you have to find that confidence and just say, okay, if you don't feel like I feel like I'm worth it, I'm going to find somebody that will give me what I'm worth. You know, and it's finding that confidence to say it and to acknowledge it. And I would say I get it from my parents. I definitely, they definitely have shaped my life, and I was this rebel girl being like, I'm not like my mother. And now I'm just like, oh, dang it, I'm doing it just like my mom. The things that annoyed me the most is what I'm doing now. But both of them, I mean, I would say they're both, fairly shy people. Like, they're both very quiet and reserved, but also at the same time, they have, like, this spitfire that's also in them, and it comes out at random times, and I've just been trying to, you know, find myself a little bit more and just kind of dig a little bit deeper and just say, like, you can do it. And my parents have always been incredibly supportive of me. And my dad, being in the construction industry, was able to kind of help me navigate those. And you pull on those. So my dad helped me negotiate a salary with the company when I was graduating, when I haven't really proved myself and show it. And so it's definitely... You've
had that support along the way.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, let's get into parents and, like, family stuff. I think that's really interesting. Like we mentioned before, your mom is Chinese, your dad is German American, mutt, like
mostly German. Yeah.
It's a interesting dynamics in the house, and growing up, your grandparents on your mom's side live with you guys, and was pretty foundational, I would say, in, like, raising the siblings, like you and Dana.
We didn't really go to
John.
Daycare.
Yeah. What was that like? Like, looking back now, how do you, like, see that experience?
I mean, my family has been described as awkwardly close, and it's not in the, like, weird, gross incest way, but it's more just we talk to each other, and I think that was very fundamental in the household. So growing up with 7 people, and one of the things that I recognize now is I hate being home alone by myself at night. So I can come home from work, I can do my work and make dinner and everything, but as soon as the sun goes down, you know, I'm like, who's out to get me? You know, you hear these, like, random noises and stuff.
Interesting. I never thought about that, because there's probably never a time really growing up when someone wasn't home.
Right.
at some point in time.
Mm-hmm. Well, when there's 7 people, someone's always home. And my
Sure.
grandparents, you know, they moved in when I was pretty young. I remember them moving in, and they've always just been around. So we moved to Apple Valley, and they had kind of their own wing, and so they just kind of took care of us. They helped us with our driving permit and giving us that experience. Sure. And they always cooked, and they helped clean the house, and so it gave my parents the opportunity to work really hard at their jobs and kind of not have to worry about making sure that there's food on the table and that it's being cooked. And so we got Chinese food. Yeah, Chinese grandparents, you get Chinese food. Yeah. Every day. Yeah. I mean, except for the occasions when they went to Mystic Lake to go gambling on a Saturday, then you get spaghetti from a jar, and that's where Dana and I get it from. Is you're like, spaghetti, meatloaf. That's awesome. That's just how that was.
That's so fun. Mm-hmm. I think it's really cool. I mean, I love other cultures in general, and like seeing other cultures and learning about other cultures, and I mean, like you said, having your grandparents live with you, it's different than maybe most of like American culture, but I think that more and more it's becoming, as America becomes this melting pot, like it's a more common thing. You used to have these like the grandparents come in and help with kids, and especially as I'm not a parent, we're not parents other than this little cute guy down here who's staring at me longingly. My fur baby, Chansey, Pooh. Hear that? That's his tail. He recognizes his name. But, I know that prices for, like, daycare and things are just crazy expensive. And some of those things just limit families in some ways because of their ability to take care of their kids and work and actually pursue their careers, and maybe like your parents did. I had a thought earlier I was going to ask you about, and now it's slipped my mind. It was going to be just something that Dana had mentioned. Maybe it'll come back to me. Do you remember... How has your grandparents and the culture of being half Chinese, how has that influenced, or do you even recognize that? I know sometimes, this is where I was going with this, Dana has even mentioned sometimes she doesn't think of herself as that, you know, it's a part of her, but she doesn't recognize it, you know? Is that something you recognize those things, or those cultural experiences, or I don't know, how is that experience for you, I guess?
Being half Chinese and being treated differently in my career?
Do you see that? Do you feel that you are? Do you feel growing up in that? I mean, you could go any direction with this.
I mean, I would say for the most part, I mean, growing up, you didn't really... I mean, no one really treated you differently, and I know Dana's got some random stories about people asking her if she's half and half, and Dana's like, I'm reduced to dairy creamer. Great. Yeah. It's awesome.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. But I mean, for the most part, I think I get more singled out as being a female engineer in my industry, not necessarily being Asian. Yeah. And so, but I have a lot of people that they'll come up to you and go, what are you? Right. I'm Kaitlin. Right. Nice to meet you. No, where are you from? I'm from Apple Valley. Yeah. I live in Eagan now, 4.7 miles from my mother. Right. But, from my parents. But, I grew up in Apple Valley. Yeah. No. Where are you from? I'm from Apple Valley.
Thanks for talking slower.
Wait, does that help it out? No. Where are your ancestors from? Yeah. Well, my mom was in New York. And it's you can tell that they're really awkward and they're trying to do this dance, and you're why does it matter to you? Right. What does it, and then finally you end up kind of giving them, being my grandparents they immigrated over from China, and my mom is half Chinese and my dad is, my mom is Chinese and my dad is German, so I'm 50-50, and they're oh, that makes so much more sense. Why does it matter? Yeah. And so I think you get that more often, where people are just you look slightly ethnic. Yeah. From what region? I don't know.
Yeah. No. You're just a little bit, something's different.
Why do you need to know? Like,
right.
It doesn't matter to you. Can we just stop this line of questioning? No. Okay, we'll just keep going. Okay.
Sure.
I'm just going to draw it out as long as physically possible to make you as uncomfortable as I feel
and
right
to
now.
make you realize, like, this just, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, it makes sense with the, like, women in your, like, like, because there's such a male-dominated industry, that being more the focus. Yeah, I just, like, I don't have that experience being a white male, so I'm always interested in, like, what that experience is like, and if you have those interactions. And even, a common question I've asked people are, like, how, like, I asked Todd the same question, like, how do we address those, maybe the racial side of things? How would you prefer people to ask you if they're going to? Obviously, you kind of answered that, like, why does it matter? Like, don't even ask in some ways. But if they're going to, because let's be honest, they probably will.
Yep.
It's not going to go away anytime soon. What would be the way that you would prefer people to be like, what's your ethnicity? Or what is that? Is that the...
I mean, I would say that that's probably the best way to just be very upfront about it. Like, if you want to know what, my heritage is, I'm half Chinese, half German, you know, or with a little something else in there. But, just ask me. Don't skirt around and be like, oh, where's your mom from?
Yeah. It's like you're trying to be sneaky about it when everybody knows what you're trying to ask.
Exactly.
Versus just like...
Just be blunt, ask me what your question is.
You're not going to insult me, but...
It's more insulting that you feel like I would, that you can't be upfront with me and that you have to kind of like dance around the topic. And
sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I don't really think of myself. I mean, if you ask me, I'm half Chinese, half German, but other than that, I'm just kind of an American girl. I've always... That's
your experience. You just grew up in America.
Exactly.
You went to high school just like everybody else. So,
but the female engineer part, I think, is the bigger part of like the discrimination and where you see that more often. And my company has been fantastic. Like, I am just one of the team. Like, it doesn't really matter male versus female, engineer versus scientist. Like, you're a part of the team. But as soon as you get outside of that into the construction industry is where you actually get a little bit of the discrimination and how that comes out. And so then you get you get biased, and then that makes me a little bit more upset than being Asian. But
I can totally see that. Where do you want to go with your, like, where do you see your career taking you? Like, what are your goals and dreams? I mean, you can answer that as much as you want to and as little as you want to as well. But
I mean, so when we were talking about boiling down kind of what you want career-wise to one sentence, and my sentence is I want to be a technical expert in my field. And that sounds really very concise, but it took me a really long time to think about that and to kind of come up with that sentence. But once you actually come up with that main theme, you can grow from there. So then it's how do you achieve that goal, and you have paths that go every which direction, and it's not a straight path that's gonna bring you there. But at least I have kind of a direction. I have my North Star that I want to go to, and so building off of that Rising Young Professional Award, it's taking that career to the next level. So I have to build experiences. So you can't go from point A to point B without developing some sort of experiences. I can't become a technical expert just by saying I am. And so it's finding those experiences and working on projects and talking with clients and building my own network base. And so it's developing contacts outside of the engineering world. So it's in the commercial real estate industry is where I've kind of focused my career. So it's meeting more people, more contractors and more brokers and more developers and trying to build that internal network. So eventually when a problem goes wrong and staying in contact with them, they'll call and say, Kaitlin, can you help me? Or can your team help me? And then my answer is probably going to be yes. And then I'm going to run around and try to figure it out. And so... Just
part of life's experiences. I mean, that's like what I was talking to your husband before we got going, and it's like, it's all like trial. Like I can't know some of the things I even need to know until I'm forced to have to deal with them. Like I had to, with the Timmy Harris podcast, we did it over Skype. Well, the file recorded and saved as an MP4 file. Well, nothing that I have allows me to convert that into, or like to post that as an MP4 file for just audio. So I had to figure out what that means, what I had to do. And like, so it's kind of similar in some ways, I guess, or that's how I like am relating it in my head of, yeah, you're going to say yes and you're going to go and take these opportunities and you're going to learn and you're going to figure it out. That's cool.
Yeah. But so I have a couple of proposals out for presentations. So hopefully, kind of developing that technical expert side of it. And one of the things, if you want to be a technical expert, you need to learn how to present and you need to learn public speaking and you need to learn that. So that's kind of the skill that I'm trying to learn next, is to develop my public speaking side of things, to develop the, what am I thinking of? Like just the presentation style and being able to talk to an audience and have that conversation. And it's almost a whole nother language that you have to learn.
For sure. And
how you present and how you use your hands and PowerPoints. And so that's kind of my next skill that I'm learning career-wise.
Yeah. You've talked about one of the things you said that we should know about you is that you love your job. What do you love about your job? You've touched on it several times throughout, and I realize that, but what are the things that I know specifically you have a few things that you really love about your job, but
I love the problem solving aspect of it. I love that people come in and just say, I want to buy this property, I want to develop it. What can you tell me about it?
Yeah.
And being able to be like, okay, let me go do my research, and you're typing on your computer and you get to kind of hammer away. And I love having people come to me and say, I have a problem, can you fix it? And that very analytical side of me gets intrigued and wants to dig deeper in it. And I also love my career because I love the company that I'm at and the team that I'm on and the respect that I get from them. It's a very fulfilling side of the career that I love. So I think I've found an industry that I find interesting, and then I've also found kind of a company that respects me at who I am. So it's kind of a double dip there, where it's like I get this problem solving side, and I get the I get kind of another side of a family that I get to be at. Exactly. And so you kind of just find your place that way. But that's why I kind of love where I'm at. I love my job, and there's a lot of hours that go into it, especially during construction time, because in engineering especially, or construction, it's winter or it's construction season,
especially in Minnesota.
It's one or the other. That's what you get. And so it's a lot of work during construction season, and then you get some breathers and you remember what a 40-hour week looks like in the winter time sometimes.
Yes.
Yep.
Wow. We've talked a lot about your work. I know you've touched on it already. We've touched on it a little bit, but I know that family is very important to you. And I guess, so you are, how long have you and Andy been married now?
It'll be 5 years in September.
5 years. Andy is also a successful young professional as well. You've two people that are very driven, that you're like kicking butt and taking names in your careers. What is that like? I just know that that's very important to you. You guys have a great relationship. We love hanging out with you guys. We joke about it because Dana and I just got married last year, but you are our best couple because Andy was my best man and you were Dana's maid of honor, and like, we enjoy hanging out with you guys. We look up to you guys. We look at you guys' relationship, and there's a lot of things that at least I do glean from that. Like as a I mean, 5 years feels like established. I didn't realize it was so long. It makes sense because that's
when you and Dana kind of started dating.
Yeah. So 5 years, I put numbers to that. Is a little shocking to me. Sorry, I'm taking that in at the moment. That's been 5 years. That just like slapped me across the face. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to actually ask this question of like, tell me about your married life, But I don't mean it in that way, but I think that you guys are special, and I think that you guys really are awesome and a great couple. And maybe we'll start here. How have you guys balanced being young, driven professionals and also having such a like solid foundation in your relationships, how has like being those young professional affected your relationship?
Well, one, I think Andy likes to call himself a rising, slightly older professional. Is the title that, you know, after I have the RYP award, he's like RSOP award for Andy. And I think we're just on the same page right now in the sense of we're just very open in our conversations, and we've always been very upfront. So some of the early on conversations was like Andy was in a relationship where finances were an issue. And, I had other relationships in my past that, back in like high school where it's like I'm paying for everything because I have the job and he doesn't,
right,
kind of thing. And so finances were kind of one of the biggest conversations that we had kind of early on. That was like, I don't want to fight about it. Like, I really like you at the time.
Yeah.
Because you are driven and you want to have a career, but it's like, I want to
have... The lowercase L word.
Yes.
Not the uppercase L word.
The little L. And it was one of those, like, finances, I do not want to be, like, people get divorced over finances.
Right.
So that's... in our relationship, that is not what we want. And so we've always been very open about it. So wherever our budgets are, especially when we were just dating, completely separate budgets, completely different finances. So it was, living together, it's, okay, where are your finances at? Are you living within your means?
Yeah.
So it's always just been, we will never get mad about it.
Yeah.
We will always just have a very calm conversation about it on this is what my books look like. What do your books look like? Like, I didn't even know how much Andy made until we got married.
Yeah.
So, which is fine. Like, it wasn't my business to know at the time.
Yeah.
And so, but finances, you just lay it out there and it is what it is. And so we just kind of have that understanding. And it's also the understanding that it's like, you need to be honest with me. Like, if you're frustrated, if you're mad, we need to talk about it, and we just need to get it off our chest. And so we've just built our relationship off of just being open and just being really trustworthy, that we're not going to get mad at each other for something that they do. And so we've just kind of, when you build on that, that's just kind of the foundation. And when we went, we had a pastor marry us 5 years ago, and you have to go through marriage counseling, and you have to go through all of those conversations. You do your Myers-Briggs test, and you come out. And I remember going through these, and the pastor, she sat us down, and she goes, okay, Andy, you were in this room taking these tests. Kaitlin, you were in that room taking these tests on these computers. I have them printed out. Let's talk about them. And some of the conversations that came up, she goes, okay, Kaitlin, you want 3 kids. Andy, you want 2. Let's talk about this. And she goes, let's just lay this out on the table, and let's get this. Andy and I look at each other, and we just kind of start laughing, and you're like, well, you start with 1. Yeah. If you kind of like it, and you want another one, then you have a second one. And then if you feel like you don't have enough, then you maybe add a third one. Yeah. And so she just was very, like, astonished in the sense of like,
you guys figured that out real quickly.
Like, I thought this was going to be like a really upset conversation. And I was like, if you're getting married, you need to have those conversations before you get engaged. That's not something that you just figure out after you're married and do it. And so it was just one of those things that, like, we've already had a conversation about it. We already had a conversation about finances and the debts. And we had a conversation with some friends that got married, it was a year or 2 ago. We flew out to California to see to be at their wedding. And they were talking about their marriage counseling because they were married in a Catholic church. And so, but they had to go to some sort of retreat, and they were like, okay, let's have this conversation about debts. Like, this is the time when you bring up the debts that you have, and in a very open and safe relationship. And they kind of looked at each other and was like, people haven't talked about debts yet. Like, he knew exactly what debts his wife had. They both went to law school, and so they both knew exactly where their debts were at and where they wanted to be and where that finances are. And everyone else is like bringing it up, and the people are mad. And it's like, that is not the time to bring up finances. No, you should have brought that up years ago.
We are getting married right now. That is not.
I mean, I'm glad that you did it before you actually got married and pulled the trigger on it. But it's like, so my relationship with my husband is just, it's a very mature relationship in the sense of that we feel we have a very open and honest conversation, and that we trust each other to not get mad and to judge each other for it.
Well, anybody that's been around you and knows you guys, like, knows that's true. Like, you guys are honestly, like, you guys are great. You guys are such a fun couple to hang out with. You're such a fun couple to be around, and You mentioned finances, and I know that you guys have your own separate accounts, but you also have a shared account you guys use. This is a fascinating thing for me. I mean, it'll be 1 year and next Saturday, like a week from today. So we're at the 1 year mark. We don't have the joint account. We've talked about this for a long time. Obviously there's some changes in our life that are coming down the road. We'll talk about that, not on this podcast, but in the future when I have Dana on. But it's just interesting to like think about these things, and I think knowledge is power. And so knowing how other people do things, and like I see how you guys handle your finances, and like, oh, cool, like they have this joint account, this is when they use it, this is how they use it, these are the ways that they, if you don't feel comfortable, but how do you guys, like, is it percentage based? Do you guys just have a flat amount that you guys put into your shared account, or like how do you guys figure out like, hey, I'm gonna put this in and I'm gonna put this in, or like based on like your relationship? If that's not something you feel comfortable talking about, it's
totally fine. And it's evolved throughout the years, kind of just evolved through how our lives were,
which speaks to kind of what you were just saying, and like your relationship. I think that's really important too, because just because it works at one point in time doesn't mean that things aren't going to change. And it doesn't need to change. And I mean, Dana and I already know, granted, we've been together apparently talking and dating for about 5 years now, which seems insane. But yeah, I mean, even within the last year, we've adjusted and adapted, how we handle certain situations, whether it's finances or whatever that might be. So that's cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of put them in three major categories. You have like the all-in, everything's combined together, and we have friends that everything is just piled into one account. They have very similar spending, so all the money comes in and very equal kind of goes out. Then you have the completely separate group, where we know people that, they were divorced and they, this is their second marriage, and they just decided to keep everything separate, and works out for them. They kind of split up things as they see fit. And then you have the like combo group that has some sort of amount. And I think when Andy and I,
the most common, I think,
I would say, I mean, I think it just kind of depends on the couple and the personality and everything. And where Andy and I were at is, so when we were first kind of started dating and we moved in together, and we were trying to figure out, okay, where do groceries go? And so we started out with like a joint checking account where it was like, we're still kind of testing the waters with this relationship and trying to figure it out. So we started off with a joint checking account where we each put like $100 in at a time. Yeah. And then, and you had to kind of keep track of it, and where the groceries came in and out, and you had to refund it every so often. And we did that for a really long time. And then I think when we got married is finally when we got a joint checking or a joint credit card together. So it was one of those things that it was like, okay, so now we have a joint credit card together. So, but what we do is basically, once the credit card comes in, so all of our joint expenses go on it, travel, groceries, you name it, and then we just split it down the middle, and then we both basically send a check into the credit card company to pay it off, and that's how it gets paid off. And so we just kind of send a check from our personal accounts, and then that's how it pays off. So we have, I mean, being married for this long, we have joint credit cards, we have joint savings accounts and joint checking account, but we also have our very own separate. We have our own personal checking accounts, our own personal savings account. We have our own IRAs and 401ks and everything like that. So I would say we're mostly separate with some kind of togetherness on it, and it works out well, just because then, when we're having a conversation about finances, it's, I want you to be able to buy a big old flat screen TV if that's what you want. Because that's important to you. And it doesn't affect me. Like, that is your own money. If you want to spend it on and on the reverse way, if you want to go shopping with your mom and your sister because you guys are awkwardly close and just love shopping, then... And
want to go buy another bag or
go buy another bag and shoes and clothes, and even though your closet is plenty big and you have enough, you can go do that, and it doesn't affect them.
Well, I like that. That's how, I mean... Right now, like, we don't have a joint account, so everything's completely separate. But we're like you guys, like, I firmly believe that communication is key, and it's figuring that out. You learn to communicate with each other every single day, and like, I'm learning about myself of ways that the way I communicate, to communicate more effectively, to communicate more efficiently, to appropriately sometimes. And sometimes it's that I get frustrated. Dana doesn't understand why I'm frustrated, but it's because she doesn't understand what I'm processing in my head. And so I have to then figure out how to do that. So, like, finances has always been a thing. It's kind of like you were talking about, like, for a good while. I mean, there was a good while in our relationship. I had no idea what Dana made. Like, it wasn't any part of my... I felt the same way. Like, it's my business. Like, I don't really care. Like, I don't need to know. Like, you take care of your stuff, I take care of mine. And, you know, as Dana bought the house / I moved in to her house / that we lived in. It's a whole another story. But, you know, we started to talk more about finances and kind of understand where each other stand financially, especially since I represented Dana as her real estate agent as well. I, like, got to know a little bit more about that process. But, yeah, we operate, and I really like that as well. We don't do that quite the same way, but it's just interesting, and it's just a thing I think that it's important for young people to know about, and people just to kind of understand some of those finances and how people operate. And I just 100% agree with the communication. I just think it's so key. I see other relationships sometimes, and I'm like, guys, you gotta just talk to each other. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, it's not all roses and sunshine every day for us, you know? Like, I get frustrated, she gets frustrated, we get frustrated at each other, but we talk about it. And at the end of the day, we know that we can, and we know that we can be open, and we can be honest with each other, and then we flush it out. And if it means that I have to say sorry, or she has to say sorry later, then so be it. But there's not anything in the dark. There's not anything you can, like, we've talked about it. We've figured it out. And
you can't dance around. You can't dance around
No.
it. That's the like, you can't hold back punches, and that's what it is you just got to let it all out, because when you hold things back is when it starts to fester.
Yeah.
You know, and
then you got resentment, and then bitterness builds up, and you got all those different things.
But in how finances changed kind of the evolution of it, and to give your listeners an example of how it is we used to own a condo, and how that kind of worked out. And that was when we got married in that condo, we were dating, we got married, and then we were a married couple in that condo. And so the evolution kind of just changed where, you know, I graduated college and got a job in that condo. And so finances kind of changed where it was, okay, you know, it started off with, you know, okay, I'll take the mortgage and you take the utilities, or you'll take the association, and we'll figure this out. And so it ended up being very separate. And then now we just bought a house about a year ago.
Right.
And then we had to reevaluate finances. And because the house is much bigger than the condo was, so then you reevaluate your finances that way. And like you asked, is it percentage based? And it is. So we divvy it out based on salary. So it's the percentage of our salary is the percentage of the expenses.
And that's how Dana and I have talked about if we do something like that, of how, because Dana is the breadwinner in our relationship. Like, she's my sugar mama for sure, in the best way possible. And yeah, that's the way we've talked about it, is like just divvying it up based on the percentage of our total incomes, like how that would divvy into and we would pay into, which feels weird. And I struggle sometimes with some of those different types of things. And, but I think it's important to kind of figure those things out. And I just like you guys said, like, if he wants to go buy a big old screen TV, like, he's got his money to go do that. And I like to do the same, right? Like, I bought this stuff with this, whether it was a good idea or not. Like, I can do that, right? Like, I can go buy, I have my stuff. Now, at the end of the day, does that affect us? Of course it does, you know, like, as it does you guys, like, but yeah, that's really interesting. With that, though, you guys have had the ability to do quite a bit of traveling, especially in the last couple of years. You've had a fair amount of travel and to some really cool places. What would you say would be, well, maybe just give us a list of some of the places you've been in the last couple of years, or?
Well,
travel?
so we've done, I like to call us kind of the king and queens of like long weekenders.
Yeah.
And we've kind of gotten that down to a science, and Andy's the deal shopper in the family. And so he gets all of these deal notifications that he's like, oh, $60 to Chicago, let's go for a long weekend. And so it's one of those things that we just kind of committed, and we love Chicago and have always loved it. It just 45-minute flight up and down.
Yep. And generally, if you can find, you
can find hotels.
Savvy like Andy is, you can find some great deals.
$100 or less at a hotel. And so you can go there for pretty cheap, and you can walk around. And we were just there, and we walked, I think, close to 9 miles a day. Wow. That's just how, we love walking around. And so we've done like New York City that way. We've done Seattle. We just did Washington, D.C. this year, Chicago. And so we kind of have been like doing long weekends and kind of just exploring all of these others. We love Napa. We've gone to the San Francisco and the Napa Valley region, and that's where we had our honeymoon and have just kind of fallen in love. And Kaitlin's kind of a wino, so love the area. And so we took a big trip a couple of years ago to the UK. Andy found these deals to in and out of Dublin for like $300 or something like that, where it's ridiculous, where you're like, is the plane gonna like crash before we get there, or
why is it so cheap?
How is it gonna why? And I think it was just because like gas prices were kind of coming down, and so they it's
at a great time.
Fuel was just cheap, and so all of these flights were going back and forth, and so we found these round trip flights to Dublin, and so we decided to backpack. And it was because when we were looking at flights, we were like, you're gonna pay more in traveling your little luggage around than it is to just backpack. And so we decided, and so I'm going to put that in air quotes, as backpacking, because it's not in the traditional backpacking. It's just we carried everything on our backs. We had a backpack full of clothes. We stayed
minimalist.
We stayed at hotels, and and I mean, my family, my mother is, I would say, and Dana are kind of hoarders in the sense of like we got to carry any possible situation needs to be prepared for before you leave. So if you're going to go to a family reunion, you're going to bring sunscreen, you're going to bring swimsuits, you're going to bring water balloons and towels, and and you come with this giant bag. So I'm kind of like the, I said minimalist-ish, where I prepare, I have like 3 raincoats in my car right now. Because
just in case you need one.
Just because I need 3 of them when it's going to be extra wet out. And so, but we just decided that, when you're paying $60 for every flight that you go on, to bring like either a checked bag or carry-on. So we did 2 weeks in a backpack. And we just said, okay. And the blogs that we were reading were just like, what they just said is pack less, bring more money. On trips like that, when you're doing it, just pack less, bring more money. Because you're going to want to buy souvenirs. You're going to want to buy a hat. You're going to want to buy a new jacket or something. So just keep that mentality. And so we brought like 2 pairs of pants. Yep. We bought like 3 or 4 tops.
Lots of sink washing.
And you got to... and I had like the little soap thing.
Yep.
But we did either Airbnb, we did some apartments, like you can get those on hotels.com, and you can get the apartments. Yep. And so we looked for places. So every few days we kind of switched around, as we found a place that had laundry. So we could just throw all our clothes in. And then I think one time when we were in London, we actually went out because they just said you have to do it. Like, you have to send your clothes out to get washed. And so that's what we did. But it was like $20. Yeah. So you can either...
We did that in Thailand. Yeah. So the same thing. Like, we did a lot of hand washing. But then there was a couple places where, like, all right, we're here. We're going to be here for a few days. Like, let's send these off to do it.
And it's so worth it, Instead of sitting in a laundromat, laundromat for, you can spend $10 more and have someone else wash it for you and pick it up at the end of the day. And you can go out and live
your best life.
Exactly. And when you're only there for 2 weeks. And
absolutely.
So, but that trip, we did Dublin, London, Edinburgh, Scotland, and then did a day trip to St. Andrews to see the golf course. And then we went into Western Ireland and then drove back in to Dublin to fly in and out. So, but we did like planes, trains, and automobiles. So we flew different places. We took a night train. It is fun.
Did you like the train?
It was one of those things that I loved having the experience, but I don't need to do it again. Okay. Because it's like chest wide. So you get into this room, you get bunk beds. So you don't get side by side beds. You get bunk beds. And
it's your own room.
It is, so we got our own cabin, because you can also get the seat ones where you're just sitting there, and we splurged, it was like $100, and it was, so we got bunk beds, and Andy and I flip-flop, where Andy's like, I don't want to be on the top bunk. I was like, okay, I'll be on the top bunk, and then it was freezing cold on the top and really hot on the bottom, so we should have flip-flopped, and it was just, and so it was chest wide was the alleyway, and then your sink folded down to a tabletop, and
I've never done the like sleeper
the sleeper trains,
stuff. I've did from South Bend, Indiana to Minnesota, actually, to Minneapolis. When I was in college, I did like the Amtrak train, which is, they have those like sleeper whatever things in the States, but I didn't need that. It was just a whole long day, 8 hours or something crazy, but it's a cool experience. I would, at least in my experience here, I think it would be fun. I think Dana would enjoy it. I think it'd be like a fun trip to go from like here out to like Seattle or something, like through Amtrak. And just,
you have to get the room though, because I was gonna say doing an overnight in a chair is not. With ours it was really fun because we left from London. I think it was like the King's Cross station, I think is what it was, where Harry Potter's the platform 9 and 3/4. So of course they have the cart sticking out of the wall. So then we got the photos of us jumping in the air with the little scarf flame, and so we're both Harry Potter, obviously. And so we left from that station at like 11, and then all of a sudden you're in Edinburgh, Scotland at 7 a.m. the next day kind of thing. So it's kind of a fun experience where it's just you're on a train and there's some beautiful sights. If you look out the window, you can see the farmlands that you're driving through, and it's a fun experience, but it was probably one of the worst nights of sleep that we got on the entire, out of the entire trip. And so we actually just booked flights in and out of Paris.
Okay.
So we're going in September for our 5-year anniversary.
Hey.
And so we are,
That's awesome.
And so we're flying in and out, and we're still trying to figure that out. And we're one of those people, like, we're planners. Yeah,
very much so.
We are very organized and very detail-oriented planners. And so with Dublin, like the UK trip that we did, we had, I think it was 11 months to plan. And we had every, I just need to know where I'm going to sleep at night. Right. And so being that deal shopper, we wanted to make sure that we had kind of all of our deals lined up. And then we'll just figure out the day as we go. We'll just have a list of things that we want to do. So Paris being, it is basically July, and we're flying out late September. Not 11 months this time.
No.
So, and we're going kind of on the mainland Europe side. We have no idea what we're doing.
But at least, I mean, it's... Unlike your other trip to, like, you guys were traveling around, so that takes way more coordination to kind of, like...
Make sure you end up where
hit all the different places. I mean, Thailand, for us, we were in one spot, but we jumped around to, like, the island. We went up north, and so, like, there's a few more things that kind of go into those. And I'm sure you're getting better and better each time that you, like, start to plan those things, because, especially internationally, you start to learn, like, you don't have to think about things as much. Whether it's... I know I need these types of things when I go here, or whatever those things you can imagine or think those different scenarios. But Paris, we had a layover in Paris for 12 hours. We got there at like 10 o'clock at night. And we were pissed at each other because it was really late and we were both just cranky and tired from jet lag from flying. And we got there and... We were, like, legit, like, just mad at each other, both of us, on our honeymoon, and underneath the Eiffel Tower, and, like, the place of love, the city of love, or whatever, and we're like, come on, like, we gotta get through this, eventually.
Don't touch me!
Yeah, like, no. I'm mad at you. We got through it, and everything was fine, but it was just funny. We ended up, even walking through there, we're both like, we gotta come back here, Like, there's just so much to see that you can't see in just 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever. So I'm excited. I'm glad you guys are going. You guys can give us tips for the future.
We're excited. So we're just trying to figure out, we're going to do another loop. So we're going to be in and out of Paris. And so we're just there's so many places to go and that we want to see over there. So but we're going to be there for just over 2 weeks. And so with travel back and forth. So we'll do another backpacking trip type thing. And I don't know.
What do you like about traveling? What is it about traveling? I like traveling as well. I think a lot of people really like traveling, but I don't know if you have anything in mind. Like,
I think it's the mental break for me. So what I've been trying to do is I want to be more present in my life. So it's not, people can multitask, or, you know, you can be doing a million things at once. You can be checking your email, you can be talking on the phone, you can be doing all these things. And what I've been trying to do is be more present in my career and in my life. So it's, if I'm on a project and I'm sitting in a meeting, it's my phone is put away and you and I are having a conversation.
Yeah.
Like right now, my phone is upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you and I are having this conversation.
Mine
and
are everywhere, but
they're just,
they're all on,
they're doing their
they're
stuff,
all on airplane mode. So it's technically just us and just looking at time and, you know, whatever.
But it's so being present in this moment and enjoying it is what I've tried. So when I'm with my clients, it's, you know, for this next hour, you and I are having this conversation and you have my undivided attention. I'm not checking my emails. And there's always going to be meetings where my phone's on if I have field staff that are running around, but and so with
making them feel important, because they are.
Absolutely. And I want them to feel like they are my most important thing at that time. Yep. And so what I've been trying to do is to be more present, and so it's when I'm at home, I want to be present with my husband, even though a lot of times I'm checking my email and watching TV and we're having a conversation about our day. So it takes 3 times as long to accomplish anything. Yep. But so I'm traveling, it's, you know, that has my undivided attention. And what I try to do... It's complex,
but it's simplified at the same time.
Exactly. And we both have really demanding jobs. And one of the things that, you know, going back to how our relationship works is we understand right now it's just him and I. So building our careers is also very important to both of us. Yeah. And we both support each other to do that. So so doing those long weekend trips, if I need to work for an hour in the morning to check my email to make sure nothing's exploding and that things get off my plate so other people can take care of it, like he's very understanding.
Just making time for one another to do those types of things.
But it's like, so we went to Chicago. It was, I don't remember if I brought my laptop or not, but so I was checking my emails, writing proposals in the morning while Andy was sleeping. We'd get ready for the day and we'd go out. Or, you know, I'd take a phone call in a coffee shop and then him and I are together. So it's like, you know, and we both have that understanding that it's like, if you need an hour, then take your hour. But I love traveling just because we both love walking. I think that is, you know, I think we're going to be that old couple that just walks around the neighborhood a million times. But so going
That's a fun fact. I don't know if I knew that either.
We just love walking. I think it's one of those things that we won't take transportation unless you are going really far. So if it's a mile or less, we'll just walk it. Or if we're just kind of walking around from site to site, because that's where you find those hidden gems.
Absolutely.
Like those random coffee shops that point you into that random bar that tells you about
like,
that random
Remember that one
experience.
place we passed by yesterday? Like, let's go check that place out for breakfast.
Exactly.
Or, let's go see if they've got what their croissants taste.
So I think when we were in New York City, we walked, I think, over 10 miles a day. Yeah. And I mean, when it's New York, you're just walking everywhere. But then it's, you talk to that person, they're like, oh, did you get that midnight pizza from that random place where they're all cheese pizzas, and then you can add like sausage crumbles on it or pepperoni crumbles on it. Yep. And then we went there twice because the pizza was so good. And so you like learn those little,
and that's how you have to do it. I think like when you're traveling, just in general, because you can only get so much off the internet. You really can.
Exactly.
And you can deep dive into some of those places, but it's hard too in the planning. You can get some things and you like write a couple notes down, and sometimes it's just maybe you're in one of those places, which then you meet somebody else and you spark up a conversation at the table next to you because they also, if you're in another country, they might also speak English or whatever. But then you get these like little gems like, oh, if you like this place, you got to check out. There's another place up here. They have great dinner. Like, definitely check that place out. Yeah. I love traveling too.
Yeah, and I mean, and when we're talking about finances, Andy and I are very fortunate to have the finances to travel now, and
you've worked hard to do that. Like you've earned that. Yeah. Like that's yours. Pat on the back. Yeah. Like you've earned that to like be in this place that you are, and you've put the time in, you've put the effort in, you've worked your asses off to put it bluntly. I mean, so like rightfully so. You guys should be very proud of like where you're at and like that ability to do some of those things. I think that's really cool.
But it's one of those things, being fiscally responsible is you put money into your savings, like you're saving for the future. But we've had a lot of advice that's like, don't wait until you're retired to travel and see, like, do it now when you're paying for 2 versus when you're paying for 3, 4, or 5. Yeah. And so it's like, enjoy being young and able, because you're not going to be able to walk 10 miles a day for, you know, when you're 55. Maybe you can for like a day or 2, but you're going to travel differently. So it's enjoy it now. And so Andy and I, we put like a, you know, $50 a paycheck or something away into a savings account, a joint savings account.
Just something simple.
Yeah. where it comes into this like travel fund. So it's basically our slush fund.
Yeah.
And so so we use that. So it's for those long weekend trips. It's, we have, maybe we have $1,000 in our travel fund by that point. And it's like, okay, we'll take $100 out for the hotels.
Sure.
Or we'll take out $200 for that. So then it's your finances stay flat.
Yeah.
It's
not that you're like taking all of that money and then
correct. It's not
spending it all. It's that you're subsidizing
correct.
your financial
and it makes it
at.
a little more even kind of week to week. So you're not just like, oh, I can't go on a vacation because I can't float that cash.
Yeah.
It's, okay, we have this travel fund that is meant to subsidize your traveling. So then you can...
I'm going to make a note of that because I don't think I've ever thought of it and from that perspective, but that makes a lot of sense.
So if you have, if your weekly expenses is like $100 whatever, and you decide to go on this trip, maybe you subsidize some of the travel fund, so then your expenses are only $150 that week, and so it's a little bit easier to make time for that traveling. And then you just kind of have, so once you build up the surplus, then you're able to take those big trips, like 2 weeks in the UK. So where it's like, okay, you're gonna have, I think we budgeted, it ended up being like $3,500 or something like that. So it was one of those things that it's like, that's where that comes from, is like, maybe you don't have $3,500 to just float from your savings account or something, but you have this travel fund to help you, so then maybe you split the cost. So then it's
or maybe that's the place you want to splurge. Chancey boy, what's going on, buddy?
Very excited.
Yeah. We're almost done, dude. Just chill out. Lay down. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Or even like those can be your like, man, if you want to go to a really nice restaurant or something, you can pull from that type of place. And like when you're traveling, like, oh, this wouldn't be something, but this is a splurge. Like, let's grab. I like that. Or that's fun.
Yeah. It makes traveling more enjoyable and less
stressful because then which was fun for our honeymoon because we were like, woohoo, we're on a honeymoon. Let's spend all the money. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely still a thing in the back of your head that you kind of think about, like, okay, I still have to be like financially responsible. But when you've planned ahead for those types of things, it makes everything more enjoyable. It takes the stress off. It allows you to relax, to enjoy and be present. I really like you talking about like being present in the moment. I think that's something that I really enjoyed from this podcast in a lot of ways, is that these conversations, maybe not as formal, but we have these conversations in real life. Like I've learned some things and obviously jotted down a few things too, but we have these same conversations in real life. And I think that it's not that you're not present there, but like, it's just you and I. There's no other outside distractions. Your phone's up there. We're here. We're just chatting. And me personally, I know I talked about it on Katie's podcast, but like, we talked about it, was the love languages. And for me, it's quality time, and quality time is a big thing. And so this has been really awesome for me in kind of Dan and I's next chapter and like transitioning how we are, of just being very intentional with the people that we care about and the people that we call friends and whatever, while we have this time to do this. And I really like it because I can just talk in circles and jibber jabber, which I have several times in this podcast where I'm like, am I being clear? Because my head is not feeling like I'm very direct and focused with this question. But
I listened to that podcast too.
Yeah.
It was interesting, and I thought it was funny because Katie's like, I hate the gift giving. Like, that's not my love language.
Right.
Which is really funny because my love language is gift giving.
Okay.
And so it's gift giving and then acts of service, I think, are kind of there.
So you give love by it's like, so like this is how I take it. It's like you give and receive love, and those can be the same, but they can also be very different.
Correct.
So like for me to receive, which is also a way that I also feel like I give, but it's different because not everybody, but it's quality time. Like I enjoy it, but I also think acts of service in some ways, or for me, it's like, and I don't know, have you read the book? So he talks about, I think he talks about in the book, like the maybe a sixth one potentially, of like cooking and like fixing food or having people over. I feel like that's definitely a love language of mine, of like, hey, I just like having people over, like hosting.
Kind of like a combo, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of that. But what were yours? You said gifts are your...
Gift giving is like my love language.
Okay,
and the way
you receive love that way.
I receive love, and it's not
Obviously
even like you need to buy me all of these nice things. It's more just like I thought of you, and like this item made me think of you, and so it could be like a bar of chocolate,
sure,
or it's one of those things like and I give love, and Andy and I read this book, and he more did the quiz and didn't want to read the book, and so his. Like, he kind of understands where I come from, because he's like, why are you buying me all this random junk? And I'm like, but I want to love you.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
But it's like, so I've also learned to tailor my, like, gift giving to him to make it a little more meaningful. So I just bought, like, his favorite peanut butter that he's been out of for the last 2 weeks because the grocery store that we normally go to doesn't sell it.
But being cognizant of those things are so important, especially in relationships, of, like, knowing, like, oh, quality time. So when I say to Dana... I miss you. Mm-hmm. And she's like, you what? You miss me? Like, I've seen you every day this week. We've sat in the same place. We've watched Netflix every night. And I'm like, yeah, but we sat and watched Netflix every night, and we looked at our phones the entire time, not being present and not, like, engaging each other. I don't know anything about your life this week other than the, like, 30-minute synopsis I got from work that day. So, like, I miss you, you know? And, like, that's me saying, like, I need quality time. Like, let's make some time for each other.
For us,
But she knows that, right? Where, like you were talking about, when you come home with his favorite peanut butter, when it's not necessarily your favorite peanut butter, and you've bought that, it's just that being cognizant of, oh, she got me this because she cares and she loves me, and this is a sign that she's...
Yeah. And I was like, I know this Cub Foods, off of this random way. I'm just going to stop there. And I know they have the peanut butter, so I'm going to pick it up. So then I just left it in the fridge, and he opened it up. He's like, oh, you bought me peanut butter.
Yeah.
And
then you're like, oh, I
know, you did it. Yeah. And I think he's coming around to the point where he understands that, like, even though he's like, oh, I didn't really want that. It's more like he understands that I'm giving it to him because I love him and I want to express my love. And then, but I think one of his love languages is acts of service as well. So, like, when I do the dishes, he really appreciates that. Because we split our chore duties, as I do laundry and he does, I fold laundry and then he does dishes. And he takes out the trash because I just never did that growing up, and it just grosses me out. Like, I gag, like, completely dry heave when it's so gross.
That's hilarious.
I don't know what's going to happen when we have kids, though, because when you, like, it's all going to be the scents and nastiness, and that's a whole nother story.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. You'll figure your way. You guys, like you said, you guys will talk it through, and you guys will find your way and figure out what works for you. And I'm not doing that. Well, I'm not doing that. Well, one of us has got to do that.
It's rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, there you go.
No.
That's cool. Yeah, I think that's really important. I think it's cool. I keep bringing it up on the podcast about, like, the love languages. My dad even texted me about it. It's like, oh, I was thinking about, like, love languages and how, like, even in doing good and making a difference in this whole, like, concept of how those different things, of how you could look at those different things within CrazyFaceUno of acts of service and doing, like, almost different, like, buckets, right? Like, of trying to inspire people or giving people ideas of what to do, of, like, oh, this is an acts of service thing you can do. This is a gift you could give. This is a way you can spend quality time with people. This is, and these different avenues. And I think it's really interesting. I'm learning about, like, I didn't know that about you. And now it makes me think even, right? Like, now that I know that, I'm like, oh, have I ever, like, my first thought was, like, have I ever given her a gift? Like, I don't know if I have, And, like, I think it's important to understand how we operate, and especially those people that you care about. And like I said on this podcast, I'm having these people on. I'm learning about different things about people and that I wouldn't normally. And I think it's really cool because I am trying to be intentional and be in the moment. And I like that I now know that you.
It's a fun. I love gifts. It just and it sounds really wrong when you're saying it, like, I love gifts, but it's not, and it's not even like the dollar amount of the gifts, and it's not that side of it. It's more just like
my mom's that way.
I just love.
So Mom, I know you're listening. Like, I know she is, right. So when it comes to a birthday, when it comes to Christmas, it's not a phone call. It's not that it's not appreciated or wanted. But it doesn't check that box, or how the book describes it. It doesn't fill your love tank. You've got this reserve tank. It maybe partially
fills,
it just doesn't. It's not filling it up. It's not. You're not investing into this area, and so it's just interesting when I know that I'm like, oh, my mom likes gifts. So that's how I filter things through. I'm like, oh, my mom will love that. Let me grab that for her.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever that might be. But I think that it just helps you filter how you can show and appreciate people in a different way. Kaitlin, we are nearing the end of the podcast. I have some would you rather questions that are actually from your house, your room. Your mother gave them to me a few weeks ago. And I'm going to bring this around full circle. Just going to pull one out. Pick a color. Red, blue, purple, green, yellow.
Purple.
Purple is food ingestion. Would you rather eat 5 boxes of Fruit Rings cereal in one day or drink 21 cups of coffee?
Wait, say that again. How many Fruit Loops?
Would you rather eat 5 boxes of Fruit Loop cereal in one day?
Hands down. I hate coffee. Hate it with a fiery passion.
Boom. Hence your tea that you're sitting here with right now.
And I also love sugar like that. Yeah,
so
fruit. Oh yeah, I totally would just hammer down those fruit rings.
I think you're right. I don't know. 5 boxes seems like a lot, but
it does seem like a lot. I mean, they're only half full anyways. It's like the chip bag conversation. So
absolutely. Well, thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you being here. We're gonna crank the tunes again here. Thank you so much. Peace.